Hey everyone, how's it going? We're back with another Summoner Scuffle. Fuzzy couldn't make it today, so instead I am joined by Prophet over here.
Hey everyone.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. Exciting match we have today. I think two people who live on the other side of the world right now, but very well known in the community. So excited to see what they bring to the table today. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And so our matchup is between SIP and Bradulf, and I feel like I see them both around a lot. I don't know. Is there anything you would say in particular these players are known for, like any play styles or factions that you see?
Um, yeah, I don't want to say I speak for the community, but I feel
Yeah.
like typically I've seen Sip, he's played a lot of Savannah Elves. I feel like he's known for that. I think in a couple of the official tournaments that were held online, he took Savannah Elves into the final matches, and so people have kind of started to remember him for that. But as most talented players, I'm sure he's well versed in a lot of different factions. And then Bradulf, I feel like when I think of him, I think of Sky Spear Avians, and I'm not sure if that's just because he's been referenced in a lot of different SA matches on Discord. But as for playstyles, I feel like it really depends. I wouldn't say they're either overly aggressive or overly conservative like some other players we probably are familiar with. But I think overall they both are very talented and competitive players, very well known, and I think they understand how to kind of control the match to bring the advantage to what their factions are good at. So, um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Are you familiar with their play styles, or do you think of a specific faction when you think of them?
I don't. I mean, I've only played them both a handful of times, and I mean, I'd agree with you. It seems like they can they can do lots of different things and pick up factions and play them however they need to in the moment. I also think of Bradulf as Sky Spear Avians for some reason. Maybe it's just like because if you play Sky Spear Avians at all, you're branded a Sky Spear Avians player because they don't seem to be that popular, which is kind of funny because I think they're really cool. But for some reason, they're just never a huge part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I don't think the deck is not competitive by any means. They never felt bad. Like I never felt like I was at a disadvantage for using them. But I guess some of the newer, shinier toys that came out like after that release kind of overshadowed them. But it's a shame because I think flight is such a interesting and cool mechanic that really allows for both like aggressive and defensive plays. So anyone who runs Sky Spear Avians in tournaments, I kind of I recognize that and I'm like, oh, you're one of the few left.
Yeah, I feel like it teaches something about the game as well. Like Sky Spear Avians were the first deck that I started to understand the idea of like playing passively. Like I just remember there was a game where by the very first turn I moved Ava up 3 spaces and I placed a gate, and then I was talking to level 3 CPU and it's like, what would you have done there? And he was like, maybe I would have just stayed back and just shot like one thing. And I was like, huh, maybe I'll try that. And then like something just clicked and I was like, wait, I can just stay in the back row the entire game and force them to come to me. Oh, this is awesome. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a. It was one of the first decks that I've ever used where I felt good about just running at the opponent. Usually that's almost a death sentence, but Sky Spear Avians are typically so mobile and agile. They could create checkmate situations and escape checkmate situations very easily. So very cool deck.
Yeah, but we're not doing Skyspear Avians today. But we will have SIP on the Breakers, and Bradolf on the High Elves, and maybe I could just start a little bit by talking about the Breakers. Since screen's a little bit offset. See if I can fix that. There we go. Since the Breakers are a little bit similar to the Skyscraper Avians, or like I put them in the same category of like this deck can really compete at a range.
Yeah.
And you gotta be afraid of that. So I'll just talk briefly about what I see as like the general breaker strategy, and then you can come in with anything you think I miss. So all your units are ranged. That's the first thing you notice about the breakers. And also they don't have that much health, except for the deceiver. But ignoring that for a second, you notice, okay, I got a lot of ranged units. My wind archers, I can pump out a lot of dice, but if it dies, I just wasted 2 magic on it. Mind Witch, it has 3 attack. It can copy any ability. That's really helpful. It can copy a lot of good enemy abilities, but if it dies in a turn, that doesn't feel good. And so a lot of what I see the breaker strategy is as preserving your units multiple turns with their low health, so you get value out of them. So you can you have the push ability from the wind mage. Mind witches can copy that, so you can like have you can have a mind witch that's copied push, have a deceiver to the side of it, and then attack with that mind witch, and then push that deceiver over in front of the mind witch to protect it, or have a gate and an archer to the side of it that attacks, and then you push your own archer behind the gate after it attacks, or just various, so you can have various movement shenanigans that play defensive, but maybe this is my bias as a defensive player coming out, and you don't need to be, and some people get more aggressive. I'm not sure. So like deceivers are maybe the best common in the entire game, and they allow the breakers to also sort of compete in the melee ranges when they're forced to, or just to block themselves off, because if you just have a sandwich, you like one of your low health units and a deceiver and a melee unit, enemy unit in between, they're going to be doing a lot less damage to you with Stupefy. And then you have various blasts. You have various events to just with movement to move your enemy around when they're not expecting it. And so I guess a good way to introduce the deck would be your symbols are resolve and wind, or I would say control and movement. So you're controlling not only your own movement, but you're limiting your enemy's movement as well. And then of course the card that I almost like don't mention is mind control. You can also it seems like this would cater to some sort of aggressive playstyle where if ever your enemy units are just surrounding you, you can just take control of them for a turn. And a lot of times this isn't great card for value, but is often used for assassinations and whatnot. And Takulu is also kind of a beast in the late game because you can just take control of enemy units instead of destroying them when you attack with her, which is situational because it's often not good for value, but it can be really good to steal that spot in front of the gate or just in the end game in general. Okay, that's a lot of it's a lot of thoughts about strategy. Well, do you have anything to add to any of that, Prophet?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you just about covered it. I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and say out there, I think Deceivers is the best quote unquote tank in the game. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the value proposition for one magic is ridiculous. I mean, really, it's 5 health if you think about it, because the odds of you rolling a lightning bolt is 1 out of 3, and so every 3 dice you would expect at least one. So at 4 health, the odds are with you that you negate at least 1 damage. It doesn't have taunt like Citadel Knight has, I guess protect, but it doesn't really need to though. Just the threat of attacking while it's nearby is enough to I'd rather you mitigate damage than redirect damage. I think that's a slightly more useful ability, and engage makes it so that your opponents have a really hard time maneuvering around them. And so even though it's a ranged unit, it acts as a melee kind of damage sponge. And I think when I think of decks, and usually the one comment I want to play around, deceivers are the highlight of this deck for me, at least. If Wind Mage to me is a close second, but I think deceivers just do so much. And I find myself playing all of them when I play breakers. So just wanted to bring that out there, that we'll probably be seeing a fair amount of deceivers in this game.
Interesting. Yeah, I can understand that. It's interesting that you said wind mages at the close second. I thought for a second
Yeah.
you said wind archers, and I was about to be like, huh, tell me more.
No.
Yeah, no, wind mages are the star of the show for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe let's go ahead and move on to high elves. And these guys still kind of confuse me. Maybe would you want to introduce them?
Sure. Yeah. So High Elves, I think one of the most complicated deck to be released today. I mean, playing these guys in person is can sometimes just be a travesty. But I feel like the general rule of thumb is each of these units, and I think they come with 3 arbiters and 1 non-arbiter unit. They have sort of these auras surrounding them, and these auras are sort of different abilities that are granted to both you and your opponent. I think peace and war are probably the most straightforward. So peace here, it gives your units tough, which essentially negates the first incoming damage each turn. And that aura is within 2 spaces. And then war, on the other hand, for all units within 2 spaces, it gives each unit +1 attack value. Um, I think this combination is one of the bread and butter of High Elves' strategy. They typically boast a really strong ranged game because of war buffing peace. And so typically what you'll see in a lot of High Elves gameplay is war on like the back line, first or second row, and then peace kind of in the third or fourth row shooting down. Peace at 3 health and 3 damage, which would be buffed by war, is really hard to deal with because you would effectively need to do 4 damage in 1 turn to take it out, which basically makes it a 1 cost 4 health 3 ranged unit, which is absolutely absurd when you think about it from a value
Mm-hmm.
proposition.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you have justice, and justice might be it might be your savior, it might be your worst enemy, just depending on how effective you can use it. And the way to think about justice is at face value, he's a lot of stats for not as much cost. He's 5/3, which is similar to Polar Dwarves' Bear Cavalry, but he only costs 2. But on the downside is that all units around him have a tone, which is essentially ability that adds 1 damage to your card after it deals damage to another opponent. Used correctly, he's to me more of like a spiked shield kind of tank where you kind of throw him in the front line, maybe you put a piece behind him to protect him, and he kind of serves the same kind of purpose that Finessa serves in Phoenix Elves, which is you're using it in hopes that your opponent attacks him, and even if he gets 1 or 2 damage off from a tone on your opponent, it's worth it because then that's additional automatic damage that he's applying for a unit that's already pretty decently costed. The downside is you want to avoid attacking while around his range because you don't want that damage sticking onto your own units. Um, and then priest on the last unit of the event common suite here, they are kind of your somewhat surprise, somewhat value card. You can summon them on top of any arbiter, so that gives you a little bit of reach. But more importantly, is when summoning them, you can automatically heal a damage, which increases kind of the longevity of some of your units. So I think it's underrated, but I find myself discarding these cards when I don't have a lot of board presence because there's not many units to heal. I guess quickly touching on the champion suite here. Cassia is probably the most well known of the high elves. Cassia is an automatic cleric. Think of her as just a unit that heals every unit within 2 spaces for 1. Of course, like high elves, it applies to opposing units too. So you generally want to keep her in the back line. Albus, a 5/3/3 cost. He's your cheap champion that can really change the tide of battle. You really want to bring him out when you're finding it difficult to manage your auras. Maybe you're giving too many of your own units a tone, or maybe too many of their units tough. And then Titus is he is probably the lesser played champion that I've seen, but when he comes out, he's definitely a high priority target. He has greater engage, which adds 2 damage to any unit that walks away from him. And then also he's given Citadel Knights Protect. So he can really come in clutch when you have valuable units like Cassia that you really want to protect. And then finally, Valeria the Summoner. She is just an absolute beast. She has Dictate and Engage. So once during her move phase and once during her attack phase, she can force a common within 2 spaces. And that's just overall so valuable at all stages of the game. I think moving a target during the move phase gives them one extra reach, and then during the attack phase gives you the ability to rearrange the board state so that your opponent just has a hard time either protecting their summoner or their valuable units. Um, I kind of rambled on there a little bit. I know we're coming up on the match, and I didn't cover the events, but I guess um, just quickly touching on the events. Oblige is their epic. I think this one is probably one of the most fun epics I've ever seen. It's really simple. You take a common within 3 spaces and you put it next to your summoner. Um, I typically use this as a execute on an opposing enemy, but sometimes it comes in clutch when you want to bring an allied unit in front of Valeria for the final points of damage, or maybe you want to cover Valeria for taking an overly aggressive position.
Hmm.
Um, and then I guess of the standard events, Sanctity is probably one of the more unique ones, in my opinion. This one, it allows for both summoners to only take 1 damage at a time, and so Valeria will find herself just going on the deep end because she's practically invincible. And it's very situation dependent because you don't want to play this when your opponent can capitalize it more than you. Think Fallen Kingdom. Like, you don't want them adding only 1 damage to resurrect a zombie because that's probably going to outvalue anything you do in the short term. And then Law of Liberty and Law of Loyalty are 2 events, or actually all of their events apply to both units. But Liberty gives all of your units the ability to attack instead of moving and move instead of attacking, while Loyalty gives your units +1 damage while they're next to your summoner or the opposing summoner. So um, interesting to see how all of these kind of play out in the matchup we have ahead of us, because I would say, High Elves needs to be very careful about what they give the breaker units, because they can really capitalize and make use of it in a way that could prove detrimental to the High Elves. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's so I feel like part of what's hard for me here is like knowing when I can use Sanctity that I'll be benefiting from it more than my opponent, or Liberty as well, and it's just
yeah.
very easy to use it at the wrong time, and it's like, oh crap, like now Velox just has 8 dice, like super free every turn.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a tricky thing to navigate because it's every card is a double-edged sword. And sometimes you'll really regret giving their deck the ability to attack twice, or their summoner to the ability to just go off on your side of the field because they only take 1 damage. But um, we'll see how each player kind of manages those situations, and I'd be interested to see how these 2 decks play against each other, primarily because they both have very control-esque elements to them. They both have, I think, resolve as one of their build symbols. So we'll see how influential that is on the battlefield.
Yeah, and it looks like they've actually gotten started here.
Okay.
Just yeah, if you scroll up in the chat just a little bit, they have the link. SIP just taking his first turn. I'll go ahead and yeah, I want to talk about what what do you think happens in this matchup? But I'll just catch us up on this first turn really quick.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's gonna be some sort of ranged battle kind of trade-off. The first move doesn't really demonstrate it as much, but Takulu being a primarily ranged deck, it's going to come down to like who can throw better range dice and trade in the short term. I feel like the High Elves, they probably want to keep as much distance as they can while trading at ranged, because they don't want to inch up Valeria and be caught in a position where Valeria takes early damage early on, just because Valeria is pretty crucial to the deck success.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just looking at the board state right now, putting a Deceiver up there on the 4th row is a very strong move, just because it kind of it really limits the positioning and potential for the high elves to kind of retaliate. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, okay. It seems like she took control of the justice. I was like, well, does Takulu also start with justice? But I realized quickly what happened here.
That's yeah. This is not what I expected from a turn one.
Yeah,
And we talk about that more, but like I'm expecting a ranged battle. I mean, just when I say see Takulu, moving up with the Mind Witch and the Deceiver. If Takulu and the Deceiver don't go 4 for 4 on this Justice, is that what it was? It was 4 for 4, right? Then we have to use the Mind Witch attack to kill the Justice. Oh, but then the Mind Witch wouldn't die because it killed the Justice, so Atone doesn't trigger. See, I missed that. I miss how Atone works. I was thinking my own Mind Witch would die, and then I'd lose this front spot. But either way, I mean, mind capping that Justice is insane, and uh, playing aggressively against Valeria. Is this what you'd expect to try to counter Valeria? Is this surprising you as well?
yeah. I mean, that's usually the first move. If you can take that front summoning spot, it's very strong, and that's just because you're really limiting their kind of forward momentum here. Especially when your opponent starts out with a piece, you can see how the Mind Witch to that front gate spot is now, it's impossible to attack it um, without it capturing pieces ability. And even in this kind of setup here, High Elves is going to struggle taking out that Mind Witch because they would have to effectively roll 2 for 2. Um, and then you have Justice kind of sitting in the back there, putting a tone down to anyone trying to hit Mind Witch at a melee. Um, all of High Elves' common have 2 ranged. So like they either have to choose between um, trying to figure out how to take it out with 2 commons and then maybe taking a tone, or dealing with peace. Oh, it looks
Yep.
like they go 2 for 2
Or
here.
you
So,
just get lucky, yeah.
oh yeah, or you just
And Valeria can oblige finish that stuff. Yeah, that's nice to clear out these units. I didn't expect it either. With with the Arbiters of Peace, they can easily just do no damage on that attack if your enemy
yeah.
is within the aura.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I feel like when we had you and Vexer on, I feel like you were both describing that maybe this was more Vexer, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that Valeria can sort of have 2 modes, like a ranged mode and then a melee mode. So like either we're moving up and like having justices with arbiters of peace behind them, and we're just like claiming the midfield, but there's also a mode where we just sort of sit back and snipe with arbiters of war behind arbiters of peace and whatnot. Is that
Hmm.
is do you think of Valeria in terms of those 2 modes, and like if so, what would you expect in this matchup?
Yeah. No, I agree with that assessment. I think I typically default to kind of trading with peace and war. Again, peace, war, and even the priest that you can summon. They just make for a really strong range game. I mean, 1 common, and assuming you have tough. I mean, for 1 magic, you have 4 health, 3 ranged. You can definitely take out a lot of other ranged units, and the reason being is that when you trade with peace, typically you want to do so on maybe the 3rd or 4th row, just because the rule of thumb is that if you can move back 2 spaces, you typically prevent them from getting the peace aura that you're giving out. um, I think it's difficult for high elves to do it on the first turn just because they have to respond to such a early aggression close in here. And now it looks like Sip is trying to play the ranged game with Archer. Um, yeah, even a 2 cost, 4 dice unit struggles to take out Peace because that's just the value Peace brings. Unless you
Yeah,
land all 4 dice, you're not killing it. So
yeah.
um,
And so for either faction to win here, like what sort of state are they trying to encourage? Like, do you think Valeria needs to claim the mid board at some point to win, or do you think she can play a winning game from her back line?
I think Valeria could probably inch out an economic victory by trading range units. Just looking at what's going on right now, putting down Priest. and it just to heal all of the damage that was done. I mean, that's a +2 to health right there. And now instead of using Peace to fight, you can use Priest to fight in the front line, which is probably preferable
Yeah.
because they don't give out Peace, but they can, or they don't give out Tough, but they can capture Tough. So for the same purposes that you're using Peace for, you can now use your Priest. And the setup that Bradulf is going for is, hey, like I can keep the battle going. Even if you take out Priest, it's already done its job. It's healed, it's putting out damage, and it's absorbing. It's a 4 health meat shield. Um, Albus here, it comes out clutch. I think this is probably a very good card to play against Deceivers. I mean, we've talked about their engage and their stupefy. Albus just completely negates that and makes them just a vanilla card. And so
Yeah.
I think Valeria has a lot of tools to deal with Takulu. If High Elves wants to see a path to victory, I think they probably will continue trading like this and look for opportunities to punish Takulu for continuing to use her summoner like she did last turn. Um, and I think maybe if they can get out Cassia, it's going to be hard for the Breakers to really take out many of their units while they're constantly healing and being protected by Peace. So
Yeah.
um, that's kind of how I envision High Elves' game going. It's similar to this. It's continuously healing their units, and using Albus to kind of negate onboard threats.
Yeah. Yeah, well, now I'm on the flip side of it, and I'm like, crap, what do I do as the breakers here? I guess that's my question now. Is like now, like if Valeria gets set up as like we almost are here in just like a few turns of like we have a priest behind an arbiter of peace, I can throw so many dice at this unit, and it's still gonna take like 2 turns to kill, like minimum, and like my dice aren't doing anything and they're just getting more and more units on the board. What's how would you how would you try to answer that? How would you what does Takula need to do to take the game here?
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tough, but I think deceivers are probably still key to this strategy. I would probably try to switch over to like a win mage deceiver kind of play where and similar to here, you can Wind Mage is going to be crucial to disrupting their formation, right? You
I
can move
see.
things
Yeah.
out of Pieces aura, but more importantly, is you can use Deceiver's Engage to kind of trigger the automatic damage that might be the last point or two of damage that you need to really finish off an enemy. Um, I think if Breakers can get out the 7 costed Wind Mage champion, Kalal, I think that might be pretty crucial to their success. Um, I think Breakers are very well known for their formation disruption just because of how easy they can access Wind Mage and how one of their champions is a 3 ranged push. So I think if they can kind of continue that kind of pressure, then they would probably be able to kind of pick apart the High Elves' formation, and continue to pressure them at range. But it's going to be a tough battle because wind mages themselves do not trade all too well. They rely on other that wind archer to really deliver the final blow. So um, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting match for sure. I'm not sure how either player is gonna respond to it, but at the moment it looks like High Elves is getting their board state up and putting a lot of pressure on breakers right now. Ooh, that 3 for 3.
Yeah, I like that image that like high elves have this like board state to set up that's just sort of eventually unkillable, and the
Hmm.
Takula is just doing everything she can to rip that apart and to disrupt that, and not to
Yeah.
let it happen. And I like demonstrating like we were talking about comparing these guys to the avians, like that very first turn we saw an aggressive push, and then now we've backed off, and that's something that seems very avians to me, is just switching between pushing and retreating just on a dime.
Yeah, yeah. I would expect that Sip probably expected his units to stay around a little bit longer. I think Oblige kind of
Yeah.
really took out his momentum there, and with any good aggression, I think you're gonna need to have a gate early on. You can't really support that forward position if you can't get your units there. So
Yeah.
I think not drawing a gate kind of really hurt his momentum. And then his board just basically getting wiped was a clear indication he should probably pull back, or he's going to be in a very sticky situation.
Yeah, it's interesting that we still. Oh, did I? Has my mic been muted? Hopefully, I don't know how long that's been muted for. Oh, hopefully only a minute here. No, I think I muted it because there was something outside. Yeah, it's interesting that we still have Valeria in the back row here. That we can set up without here. I guess you were saying earlier that like we don't want to let Takulu get like surprise 7 dice on Valeria or something.
Yeah.
That she can really get a lot of value whenever she decides to come down with her Songs of Sanctity.
Yeah, and as high elves, when you're playing the ranged game and you have your 3 attacks and you don't really need Valeria to reposition, there's no real need to expose her. Valeria is going to struggle to kind of advance unless she's holding a sanctity, just because with ranged, especially in Wind Archer in the back and Wind Mages, you could easily take 6, 7 dice just walking up to hit an opponent. So
Yeah.
he could be just waiting for maybe sanctity or another gate. But I think something interesting that just happened last turn was, something I thought about when I was thinking about this matchup was Mind Witch. Mind Witch is just such a unique and interesting card, being able to just be whatever common it chooses. In the perspective of playing against high elves, it's cool because they can capture War's ability by copying a unit that has War's ability. So it effectively extends its range by 2 because all you need to do was copy the piece, even though War is out of range, but you would still get the damage buff.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
and so that's very interesting because now you have Mind Witch at 4 dice, um, and just able to kind of tear apart piece if it get lucky. But it's gonna be hard for
Oof.
high elves to avoid giving Mind Witch War's buff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've been a little bit worried for Takulu with like the first push, like not being able to follow through, but like Valeria still isn't really on board. I mean, like, or as on board as I would feel like, oh gosh, I'm never gonna get through all these units. Like SIP has been doing a decent job of, or SIP. Did he ever say if he preferred SIP or SIP? I feel like he said he had no
No,
preference.
I'm not sure. I
It
called him
was
Stip.
it was a question in a tournament at some point. But anyway, SIP has been doing a good job of just killing a unit or two every turn, which is I think you mentioned this before, and this maybe helped me as well playing against the high elves is just the idea of you need to focus fire. Doing like 1 damage to like 3 different units because they're all protected by tough is not going to do anything. But like
Mhm.
it just pick a unit and kill it.
Yeah, yeah. See, there we go, copying piece again,
For the 4
giving it
dice.
the
Yeah.
yeah the 4 dice. It's just and copying at 3 range. It's impossible. You could chain Mind Witches too. So your second Mind Witch could copy your first Mind Witch, and they all have that buff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice.
ooh,
Please kill it. Oh, thank goodness.
yeah.
I feel so bad. I like using Takulu. Like it's sort of it's sort of what I tend to do. It's just like Takulu. I don't know. She's not hugely impactful on the game, and so I often just like, well, here's 12 health that I can just use to keep my other common safe until she's taken like 6 damage, and then I'll just retreat and never use her again.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, he's obviously building up magic. I think he has a champion in hand. That's I'm suspecting that right now. He's using Takulu, taking some damage with her all throughout the game. I think Takulu and that piece were in like a duel of death for like the past 3 turns, just 1v1ing each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I'm surprised. Breakers hasn't really drawn a gate yet. Also noticing that he didn't discard a card last turn. I think he's still at 15 in deck. So it
Interesting.
to me seems like he has something planned, because if I were him, I'd be searching for a gate. So
Yeah.
maybe we're gonna see a Goldoon. Maybe we're gonna see I don't the champion with flight. I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
noticing that he didn't discard is definitely something that surprises me, because I would be trying to frantically find another gate to kind of help my coverage here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, maybe it's just a handful of like good commons because it's hard for me to see like Gildoon coming down onto a board like this. It just wouldn't have the cover for it and and like the board presence. And Kalal maybe, but Kalal costs one more than we have, and I don't really ever see anyone playing Gwalek. But
Yeah,
I would tend to. I mean, it seems like SIP has been building towards the champions. I feel like a lot of times I'm just like, I love the commons in Takulu so much that I just want to play them all. And like, this is like generally a trap that I've gotten out of for like other factions is I'm like, no, discarding early is good. You got to get rid of these
yeah.
units. But still with Takulu, I'm just like, I have a Mind Witch and a Wind Mage in hand. I'm just on turn one. I'm just like, I cannot discard these. They're so good. But do you, and yeah, and then we had a comment in chat that it feels like it's hard to get breaker champs out. Do you have much thoughts on that, on how often you play champs? Are they worth it?
Yeah, Breakers has like one of the highest costed champ suite of all factions, and I agree here. It's tough. Five is usually a good number and decent to reach. I think you can easily end a turn with 2 or 3 magic. So it really just takes one turn of maybe summoning one costed unit and winning a trade or two to get to five. But six, that becomes a harder stretch,
Yeah,
and seven even more so. So I agree. It's tough, but they really do alter the game, right? Like Gul'dun, Kalal, and even Gwallark sometimes they can really change how the game goes, and so they become well worth the investment. But the question becomes, can you weather a board state without summoning units for a turn? Do you have that much of an advantage that you can discard some of your commons and not play them?
yeah.
If you play well enough, then yeah. But otherwise, you might do what Zip is doing right now and frantically trying to prevent this advance here.
Yeah, yeah. So we're seeing the advance you sort of talked about, where somehow there's how did this even happen exactly? I guess we must have annulled our justice because I'm seeing a justice at the head of the field, and
Mhm.
Bradulf attacked last turn, but nothing took damage. So
Yep.
using so I guess it must have been annulled, and yeah, this is scary as to like this is forced to
Yeah.
summon all new units to respond to this justice that might not even die to these 8 range dice that you've just committed.
hmm it's gonna be difficult, and I think Albus and Justice is like your bread and butter combo when you get Albus out. It's like, look at that. With that piece saved his life, and now Mind Witch is, oh well, Mind Witch is not going to take a damage
Uh,
because she didn't do any damage. But
yeah,
but even if she did, it's like a poor trade, right? Like you're probably not going to kill the priest. You're definitely going to take a damage. um, and what's even scarier from the high elves is like when Justice is like at 1 health, not only does he get to just bring 3 more damage next turn and kill something, but he denies himself, which is absolutely massive for your econ game, because you don't have to waste an attack denying your opponent magic. Even more
yeah,
importantly is that you can now kill yourself to allow the unit behind you to attack down the same row.
yeah,
It really is just a very tough situation for breakers right now, because
yeah,
they're gonna struggle with this advance. But at least for Sip's point of view, he's winning on the economy side. I mean, looking at kind of the discards and draw pile right now, it's a little, Bradulf is running out of gas a little bit here on his last 7 cards, but that might not matter. He might just have the board state to really just make it so that Takulu can't really respond.
it's so dirty. I mean, I think I guess we could have thought about like the 8 range dice on the justice. I mean, the justice effectively has 6 health, and I don't know what the odds are exactly for 8 range dice on 6, but I think it's like around 65 or something, 68. So like it's you can definitely miss that. And
Yeah.
it might be less than that too. But like but the fact that and having to commit so much to that board, that makes me think that SIP feels just felt like it was necessary to go out on a limb to be like, okay, I need to I need to assassinate a unit. I'm gonna lose a lot of value, and the fact that he didn't even get it feels really bad.
Yeah, yeah. Didn't get the magic. Ended up losing his archer in the back because that unit stayed around. And I mean, that's just really the power of peace. You don't you don't really need to do anything. It just passively provides value. And the turns where that one health mattered, like last turn, can really just swing the momentum and make it very difficult. Um, I think Takulu's struggling right now because there's just not any gates. I think even
Yeah,
though High Elves really only has one more gate on top of that, it's giving him a lot more options than Sip has right now. I mean, Sip is ahead, still kind of 12 cards in the deck. Bradulf with 6, so the game's not really decided at the moment. But it's there's definitely a board state going on for High Elves, and that piece is really making things difficult. So okay, here's the Wind Mage. I think the Wind Mage pushes the Priest. Oh, and here's the second gate we're looking at, an aggressive one. Um, so that's interesting.
Hulu's got something planned again. Again, the avian's just like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm there now. I'm gonna be aggressive. See if you can handle this pressure. It makes sense though. Like, I definitely feel like sitting in the back. Like I'm just game's not going my way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Got to change something. So something else I haven't mentioned is I feel like Law of Sanctity is an easy play in this matchup. Maybe you disagree. Maybe I undervalue Takulu, but Takulu seems like there's some summoners where it's just like, oh goodness, I do not want to let them get in so much, but Takulu just doesn't do much. um,
no, yeah,
and
I agree
so
with you.
it seems like a really easy play to just get a ton of value out of Valeria.
Yeah, typically you don't want to play Sanctity when your opponent has a lot of ways to do like chip damage. So like Phoenix Elves or Sand Goblins, they have a lot of way to just do one damage at a time. So that's not
Uh-huh.
really great for Sanctity. But Takulu's only method of doing that is maybe Blast or Deceivers, both of which you can't really do with the Summoner. So yeah, the value proposition of Sanctity is great here because Takulu doesn't really provide much of a threat outside of just killing your opponent's units. But if we know kind of how ILs have been operating with peace, you're not killing units. You're struggling to do that, and so Valeria could just pop Sanctity, walk up by herself, and really not have to be scared of a lot of things. I
Yeah.
think maybe a Wind Mage like push down the same column to attack multiple times could be scary, but like
For
you're
like
looking at three damage most,
yeah.
2 or 3 damage most, right?
and,
So
and then your board has just
mhm.
stayed the same, and so I feel like you just win on board at that point unless there's an assassination.
So something I brought up last time I played on the Scuffle was that one of the strategies you could take when you feel like your game against High Elves isn't really going your way is just start running at them, and I think that kind of a 4 gate here kind of supports that thesis. Um, you want to do this because now it's going to be difficult for High Elves to rearrange their formation so that all of your units aren't affected by peace and war. But if breakers can get down deceivers protected by peace and start copying that with mind witches to get the extra attack value, suddenly the game doesn't feel so heavy towards High Elves' aura just because now you can capture it and hopefully use that to kind of start turning the game into something in your favor.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we see a Justice spawn out on the front of their gate here. Is this probably going to go for Takulu? I feel like it is, but oh, here comes a Sanctity turn.
Yeah, seems like it. Yeah.
Smells like it.
I wonder, yeah, do you even use dictate there? Maybe to protect your own arbiter of peace or something?
I mean, probably. I probably. Oh, I guess not.
Just
I
a little
guess
bit.
the only real option is the deceiver, but that just kind of really hurts him, to be honest.
Yeah. And then you probably got to move the other Arbiter of Peace up. No, the War. Interesting. I guess the War is protected by the Arbiter of Peace, so it's fine.
Mhm.
I'm worried the War is going to get assassinated, though. But then again, like, who am I kidding? They're the Breakers. It's not going to be able to. I doubt we could dish out 4 damage on that Arbiter of War. I mean, maybe with 2 commons. It's so tough. It's so funny because like when the Hyles first came out, it was like, oh, these factions are really tough. I don't know if they're gonna have the juice. And now it's just like every unit takes 3 turns to kill. What is this
Mhm.
faction? It's
They, yeah, it's definitely. I feel like it's the hardest faction to date. I mean, Fungal Doors are up there when they came out, but High Elves, that I feel like just blows it out of the water because not only do
interesting.
you kind of have to understand your strategy, but you have to like play around not giving that to your opponent. And so it's tough. And I mean, even there, he was debating on whether or not to keep War in front of the gate because like then now you have 2 units that could be spawned on that gate that would have War. And so it's going to be tricky. But definitely an interesting board state. I feel like he's trying to play around Sanctity, maybe do some. Well, actually, no, because why would he put Justice against Dekulu if he has Sanctity in play? Maybe he's just going. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah,
Block the gates. Yeah. Oh, and another gate of our own.
I was asking myself why he didn't put Peace behind Valeria, but then I realized that would give Wind Mage the guard. But I mean, I
Oh
guess you
yeah.
could always shove the Wind Mage out of to do the last 2 damage. You just have to do 2 for 2.
Yeah.
Okay, or that works too. Yeah, you're not really going for the Deceiver. Yep. I think something that's underrated with High Elves' kind of playstyle is they're actually really good at destroying gates. And as I say that, they didn't destroy the gate, but um, it's interesting because like you would think it's with peace on the field and war, like sometimes it's difficult because they have units in your face that are protected by your own peace. Just go for their gates. It's another path to victory. You take out most of them, and then suddenly your opponent is left with a few options, and you take out all of them, you basically win. So it's something I've always kind of messed around with. Is like, hey, I don't have any good targets for like Law of Liberty right now, or maybe Sanctity's up, and I don't really have any effective targets. So going for the gates is just as good. I mean, I feel like taking out a good portion of them really progresses your gameplay. So I definitely have find myself doing that a lot with high elves.
That's interesting. Yeah, this there's so much. I feel like I'm learning so much on the fly here.
Yeah.
About just yeah, and about just the general approaches to high elves, and like it's making more sense here. Like the approach of like you want to disrupt their formation like however possible, and Takulu can kind of do that at a range, but it was also nice that first push to just anything to stop them from just having their units situated exactly
Yeah.
as you want them. And yeah, like you're saying with destroying enemy gates. See that's a take like if you told me that like if you posted that in the chat and then later said yeah that was a total meme, high elves can't do that at all, like I would
No.
believe either thing. Like I haven't tried it. It's
It's definitely it's a hard thing to kind of go for each time because like typically it's difficult to take out gates in 1 turn, but I mean in certain situations it could be worth it, right? Like
yeah
I think that aggressive gate is a huge problem for high elves. They don't really want anyone kind of walking up in their back line and doing things they shouldn't be doing because they have wars buff back there.
yeah
But kind of like we talked about, it's high elves like to transition from this kind of range trade-off game and slowly advance. And I think that the moment to do that is like when you get a board wipe or when you see your opponent is struggling to keep up their commons because you're taking it out every turn. Valeria has now advanced, which effectively put her on the opponent's side of the board, and she did so in a matter of two-ish turns. So
Yeah.
um, looks like Cassia's out, and that's going to be very tough for breakers to deal with right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Justice already is getting insane value just by providing a tone around him and being protected by peace. I think High Elves goes for that one health gate to kind of seal off the flank there, and then now Takulu is going to have to deal with just this massive units getting healed, pieced. Just it's going to be tough. I'm curious to see how Sip kind of responds to this because this is the ideal state for High Elves right now,
Yeah.
and so we're going to have to see what he comes up with to kind of respond to this.
Yeah, yeah, and I hadn't even realized that previous turn that Valeria hadn't even played the Law of Sanctity. So we did get some damage, but yeah, I mean, three damage, and now she's never going to be seen again until the Law of Sanctity comes up. And maybe we discarded an early Law of Sanctity to get the juices flowing when Valeria
Mhm.
was just in the back for a few turns.
Yeah, I feel like High Elves, Cassia and Albus, they're so cost efficient. I feel like it's not hard to get them out. And I feel like there's just this kind of dichotomy of champion suites here where on one end of the side you have very affordable champions that add either minor or major benefits depending on the board state.
Yeah.
But when you look at breakers, they have very expensive champions, but these champions can be absolutely game changing.
Hmm.
And don't really need a lot of setup to kind of start bringing value to the board. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I feel like this is the sort of board where I would want like Gildoon or something. Like I'd want like now everything's neck and neck. I can put Gildoon somewhere where he can only be attacked on one side. I guess Gildoon can't get tough. Uh, I don't know.
yeah, he can't get tough. He can't get any of the the common suite auras. But I think it's helpful to have champions when you play against high elves because you don't want Valeria dictating it. You don't want a tone on your board. And I think high elves in general can struggle with champions. Their only answer to champions is maybe justice and maybe law of liberty. But outside of that, like it's a hard thing for high elves to really deal with, like a champion heavy deck. But I think breakers probably try to go for an early champion strategy here, but couldn't really manifest that because they couldn't support the board and
Yeah.
keep up the momentum without playing units. So it's kind of like why breakers aren't S tier. I think personally, I think they have a great suite of commons. I think they have a really strong suite of events, maybe outside of mind control, but um, it it just the champions get so difficult to play consistently that you really have to plan your entire game around them and hope that your board isn't just so devastated that you have to play commons just to keep up. But yeah, it's tough. And I mean, even just saying that now, I feel like I see an out for Takulu. I think what Sip could do here is just hope that Valeria gets greedy, surrounds herself with commons, and then maybe Law of Liberty. Um, Takulu just needs to mind control on a turn with Law of Liberty, and Valeria's dead.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see if Bradulf can see that coming away. But mind control is like one of those cards that's like pretty much not useful for most of the game until it wins you the game, and then
It's
suddenly you're like, I'll hold on to one of these just in case.
it
But
it, it has that stealth factor because like I'm just so used to discarding it that I like it. It's just like the one card that I just consistently always forget about. Like I
yeah,
never remember that Takulu has it, and I don't even know if I can count on two hands how many games I've lost just by forgetting about mind control.
I always forget about mind control, and it's like I know it's in the deck, but Oh, Hypnotic Call. And yeah, this card can actually combo with Mind Control pretty well too.
Yeah.
Just pulling units into your range and getting them in your Mind Control range can just be devastating. Looks
The
like we're
gate
going
comes
for
back. Woohoo!
yeah. That's a very very popular spot for gates. It seems.
Yeah, and that deceiver is going to be kind of tough to deal with. I mean, maybe Valeria does something to it, but
Mhm.
takes a lot of moves to do that. So I like that. I like that we're in Valeria's face now. Even though that's, yeah, I feel like that's sort of just like the dichotomy with Takulu, and like why she feels weird or hard to get is just that like sometimes she can do this, like just deceivers in your, like all my units are in your face, or just to like to wrap your head around like it's the ranged faction that like sometimes you gotta go in melee range, but that's fine. And like
Mhm.
how exactly that's fine is is a weird one.
Yeah, yeah. And if I were High Elves, I mean they have 6 cards left in the deck. I haven't seen any Sanctity. I'm a little surprised because I thought Sanctity would be kind of favored towards High Elves here, but
Yeah.
I guess Law of Liberty is very dangerous for them because you generally don't want to give liberty to any ranged units because that's just a recipe for pain. Um, and it is how Valeria will lose if that's what she chooses to do. So I can respect why Liberty hasn't been played yet, but if that's something Bradulf doesn't see, then maybe Sip has a way out there. You know, just getting Liberty or Mind Control down, Valeria at 9 health, it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like Liberty maybe seems like the hardest card for me to play in this deck. Like just to have a spot to play it where I'm comfortable and I'm like, yes, this is gonna get me more value than it's gonna get them. Maybe that's where some like with your thoughts about like gate destruction. It's like, yeah, if I use my Law of Liberty to destroy an opponent's gate, so now like now I know that now they're gonna have less summon spots, so they're gonna have less units of their own to use with Law of Liberty, or just like
Mhm.
maybe complicated stuff like that is what I miss because it often just feels real tough. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's I've never discard Liberty unless I'm playing breakers or
really
close.
interesting.
Yeah, I think it's such a crucial. I mean, because
Never.
Valeria is one of the only decks in the game that can easily reposition during the attack phase, as in they don't need another card to do so. You can throw out a lot of dice if you have ranged units stacked on top of each other. I mean, you could attack with the top unit, move Valeria to move that top unit into the flanks, and then have the unit behind it hit it. Then reverse the process by having the behind unit hit it, then Valeria attack to get the front unit to go back in it. And so you can have 2 units hit versatile for like 4 attacks just by doing that combination. So I think that's a lot of damage. That's how they get down like crazy amount of dice each turn.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
their only real way to respond to champions too. Uh, at least that's how I feel. Wow, no progress.
it's
it's
it's felt tough. I don't know what the actual dice odds would reflect, but it's felt like there's been a lot of critical turns where it's just like if we could have just killed that unit, it would have been awesome, and it has not happened.
yeah, yeah. It's tough for Sip right now, and Peace, Cassia. It's really making this kind of a very difficult battle for him. I like the gate placement on A1. That's interesting to me. I think he's understanding what the rest of his deck looks like, and it's probably a lot of ranged combatants, like maybe Mind Witches or Wind Archers, and maybe less Deceivers, because the only reason you'd want to get up there is if you have plenty of Deceivers to go around. But if you don't, then you know there's not really any purpose to bringing it up there. Just because all you're doing is putting your ranged units in threat of getting killed. So um,
Yeah. No, I like that, and it's interesting that like, yeah, he did that play and then thought about it and then went back and if you're thinking that thought is looking at his deck and looking at looking at what his game plan is at a whole. that can be tough to do. Like, and I feel like those are the hardest turns in Summoner Wars when I really just need to like sit down and be like, okay, it's like, how do I win this game? Like, what is my goal here? Like, and like maybe have to just turn my strategy on a dime, if whatever I've been trying to do isn't working. Or
Yeah, here comes another example of how versatile Albus can be. I mean,
yeah,
you can mute the opponent unit, you can mute your piece. He didn't go for the justice here because he has Cassia up, and rather just give peace the buff so that, oh well, I mean,
aha,
that's that's karmic. Okay, well, okay, it's only had one health, but
so close.
yeah. But will it be enough? That's the real question. I still think it's looking kind of tough here for Takulu. Um, if he has another gate, I think he should still have one more. He could run up to the summoning spot of the 4 health gate, drop a gate in front of him, and then hope that his units, the high elves units, kind of stick around so that he can mind control,
Yeah,
get some damage on Valeria, and then maybe go for an assassination here. Um, but I don't really know his hand, so it's kind of difficult to see kind of what the game plan here is. But um,
yeah. Yeah, I wonder, like, if that happened as Valeria, or if that happened to Kulu, runs up and places the gate. Like, what do you think the response is as Valeria? You just like, crap, like, how do I not die to mind control? Like, I don't know how she would move all her units around to, like, I mean, I guess you're really only up against like 6 dice, but that's a lot.
yeah, your response is play Sanctity, or
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, or you could move Valeria in front of your 5 gate and then bring up your war so that it protects your left flank, and then hope that you only take damage from one side. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's mind control is definitely gonna be an issue if Valeria is trapped like that, because that's how. And would you look at that? Is it manifesting? Am I
Let's see
seeing
it.
this?
The gate. Let's come down. I really hope that Wind Archer survives the turn. Oh, not quite. Right
No
to the
gate,
attack phase.
just bravery today.
Yeah, and we might be out of gates. But maybe, I mean, this this like almost wants to bait a law of liberty or something. Like, I wanna really pound on Takulu. But uh, yeah, I don't know if the High Elves will be able to roll that many dice on her at the end of the day.
Yeah, because Cassian won't get liberty. Justice is not in a position where he could do it unless,
Yeah. Oh,
no,
that's
he
true.
can't, because
Yeah,
Valeria
yeah.
can't force them. Yeah. So I mean, pretty smart. I guess you wouldn't be in danger of a liberty here. And I would bet he's going for that mind control kind of out.
What the heck?
Um. All
Trying
right,
to
3 out of 4.
kill it.
Of course,
Ah!
of course not. Before magic,
This
why
has
not?
been so sad. This is such a sad showcase of the breakers. Like, every time we're just one we're just one damage short of what we need. How
Yeah, someone
many
in the chat said need the bad dice alarm here. Yeah, it's the tragic dice alarm. We need to sound it off.
we just need the breakers alarm. Just
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, it's unfortunate. Range dice are just so finicky. And this is not the deck you kind of want to be finicky with, because um, they will punish. They could heal it back. They could, just, it's just so hard to kill high elf units.
Yeah.
Um,
Moving out, that Arbiter of War isn't, I guess it's doing something. It's buffing the piece.
yeah, it's buffing the piece.
Well, this doesn't totally make sense because the Arbiter of Peace is moving back, but the Deceiver is still protected by the other Arbiter of Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would keep it there. I mean, yeah, it looks like, I mean, definitely a very baity turn, because like Takuli just walking up, exposing herself means that she has mind control. But Maybe Bradulf sees it and is just okay with that risk. 1 damage though.
Let's see
Okay. I
it.
mean,
Let's see the comeback. I would love it so much.
oh yeah. I mean, mind control, move the piece, walk up and hit Valeria for. I mean, it's possible, right? Like there, I see 10 dice with Wind Archer in the back if he has a mind control, but
10 dice with Wind Archer in the back. That's true. It's this, like, it could just be it right now. I mean, that's very unlikely, but you might go for it. Might go for any chance you can get.
I'm a believer, Ben. I'm a dreamer.
Yeah, yeah.
In these situations, you kind of have to dream.
Yeah, I mean, and that's you take the out you have. Yeah. Makes sense. Not quite. So do we not have the either we don't have the mind control or we're not going to go for it. I feel like if you had the mind control, you'd go for it here, just to put Valeria on edge and worrying about second
Yeah.
mind control. So is that a good indicator that they're all discarded, or maybe the last card in our deck is a mind control?
I find it very hard to not use mind control right there because like you
This,
get so
yeah.
many units. Wow.
Uh,
Justice cannot die, dude. Oh, but at least the Wind Archer makes up for it on the
let's
flank there.
go.
But
Let's go. Our first big hit for
yeah,
SIP.
but yeah,
Uh,
there's just Peace and Cassia making Justice absolutely immortal. Albus kind of negating his ability to kill himself, and it's like it's living on the edge here. And that's kind of just where high elves excel. It's like most games kind of devolve into like one person. You know, you make smart moves, your most optimal plays until just the dice doesn't cooperate, and then you punish. And high elves, they can really make that punish very devastating. Whether it's denying their own units, re-healing them with priest right here. I mean, that justice, if he's annulled, it's gonna go back to 3 health. He's somehow gaining more health every turn. Um, yeah.
uh,
Oh, he's going for the deceiver, I guess, just to negate the. I guess he doesn't need to annul justice because he won't kill himself.
uh-huh.
That's fair. Oh,
Just
then
pushing it back.
why? Oh, okay. I see. I would have annulled the justice there because if you're gonna move the deceiver out of the way,
Law of
okay, law of
loyalty.
loyalty.
Oh, I guess just big hit on Takulu. I guess it would have only been one less dice on Takulu, but
I guess you
that's,
don't want to annul the justice because you don't get loyalty if you do that.
oh, do you really not? Is loyalty
No,
an ability?
loyalty is an ability. Yeah,
Interesting.
loyalty. I think loyalty
Oh
is an
wait, no,
ability.
no, it's not. No, it's not.
It's
Uh,
not.
it's an active
Oh no, you're right. You won't get versatile. I'm mixing up the cards here.
or the
Then yeah,
the
I don't
yeah
understand why you wouldn't annul the justice.
yeah. I mean, I guess
But
one less dice. I don't know. From the Arbiter of War, but it's gonna be tough for Takulu either way here. But yeah, maybe we'll see like a deceiver wind mage to punish that or something, to get the justice killed for free.
yeah, what someone in the chat said with these dice rolls. Yeah, I mean, you got to
Yeah.
plan around the bad dice always.
The plan is to forfeit.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and something I'll always say about Takulu when people just complain about the dice is that it feels like out of any faction, she has a lot of ways to just mitigate the bad dice rolls. Like, okay, I just did 0 damage with 6 range dice. Well, all my units have deceivers in front of them, so it doesn't really matter. I'll just attack you next turn.
hmm
But this is tough. I don't really see a way out of this game. I think this is over.
yeah. It's gonna be a really tough comeback. I think again, Tagulu, you can never really discount her assassination potential. If Valeria was a couple of points lower, I could maybe mock up some ways that she could edge out the win, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think High Elves is pretty smart, not playing Liberty here. And it's just a shame that like probably in his effort to get out a champion or a gate, he probably discarded one or both mind controls because you know, like someone in the chat said, the champions are just so difficult to get out, and you really want to play them, but you're gonna have to make some sacrifices, and it's such a painful thing to kind of discard a deceiver or a wind mage because they're just so critical to your game plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, see that automatic damage coming in, that's probably the way to go about it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Interesting that wind mage still takes a tone after justice dies to the push. That's an interaction I haven't really thought about, but
Yeah, I guess they've both triggered. That's the triggered and resolutions coming there because they're both after attack.
yeah, I'm loving this 0 damage turn. It's absolutely riveting. I would be so frustrated playing against tiles.
Yeah, yeah. I'll definitely want to ask both players about how much they're thinking about Takulu champions because I feel like I'm still like I'm still playing Takulu. Like I'm just like I just whatever. I'm not gonna play them at all. I'm not gonna play any champions or I don't care. But I do notice that like most people that are taking them to tournaments, you usually see a champion come out. And I'm wondering if Bradulf like noticed the turn SIP was at 6. I think that was the turn that Bradulf made a push, or like if Bradulf is just like trying to is if that's part of his thought process of making it difficult for SIP to push.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I remember talking to Water D or seeing him kind of talk on the Discord. He plays a lot of breakers and he says he always just discards very heavily to try to get out at least one champ. He says he tries to play 2, which to me is incredible that you can build up 13, 14 magic. But it's tough when you're not killing things, right? Like if you're not killing things, you're not getting magic, and you're just not building up enough momentum to really change the game. And yeah, it looks like kind of just really out of gas here on the breaker side. Congrats to Bradulf. I mean, played a very solid high elves game. And so yeah, that was a tough turn. I mean, that war managed to get 4 dice off with no magic. Did I see that right?
um which
The war on the last. Oh no, he got 1 mad. Oh, but that deceiver was annulled. I see. Yeah,
oh yeah.
that's tough. Albus really doing a number on deceivers here. Just for 3 costs, just it just does so much. Even if you can't really annul anyone on your opponent's side effectively, annulling your own piece or justice still is value. It's like a +1 to health each turn, just not atoning yourself. So um yeah, I mean, congrats to both competitors. They played
For
solid
sure.
games. Yeah, I think this was a really good showcase. I am interested to see kind of everyone's thought process on how the game kind of evolved from this sort of aggressive, then range, then back to the midfield. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to see kind of how Sip thought about his exit strategies after just realizing he cannot kill any units from high elves because it's tough. I would imagine anyone playing against high elves right now, they probably feel the same way. So
Yeah, I mean, and even though it felt like an uphill battle for for a lot of that, like I feel like he demonstrated very good strategies in playing against the high elves that I want to try to use. Just dancing back and forth and disrupting the formation when he could. And, yeah, it got out of control. Hey, Sip, you in chat here?
Hi there, yeah.
hey,
Nice to see you. Well, I'll have you introduce yourself in a second, but how you feeling? How you
Hello,
feeling about the
guys.
game? Hey, Bradolph, how's it going?
Nice.
Yeah,
That was a funny game.
yeah, for sure. That was a lot of fun to watch. That was great. Well, maybe since you're both here, I'll just start by having you guys introduce yourselves. So maybe Sip, we could start with you. What got you into Summoner Wars? How long have you been playing it, and so forth? And what keeps you coming back?
Well, so I started back in first edition, and it was in primary school. I was like 10 years old or something,
Yeah,
and my in my school there was something called logic games. Those were events organized weekly by a local board game store, and there we were able to play many different board games. And one week they brought Summoner Wars, and I was like, "Wow, this game is insane! I want to play more." And yeah, that's kind of how I started. Then I made some research whether there are any tournaments around my city or country, and it turns out there were there were organized in two places weekly. So there was
Wow.
a lot of way to play competitively at that time.
Yeah. That's great to see the local game stores pulling through. That's sort of
That's awesome.
a dream come true to have
Yeah.
the local scene. Weekly
I wish I had
tournaments.
that in
Me,
grade school.
me, yeah, me too. That's great. Well, and maybe Bradulf, we can turn to you. How did you get into this game? What keeps you coming back?
So started with first edition. It was 8 or 9 years ago. I was on some fantasy event, and there was like premiere of two start set of first edition. So yeah, after that I found a local store with a weekly tournament, met Sip, and we started playing like at least two times in a week, because like Sip said, two different local stores organize tournaments. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of games, but I never played online during first edition, only in paper edition. And when first edition died and nobody played, I guess. Why I returned to second edition is a good question. When I first saw second edition, I was, I think, quite a negative attitude to second edition, to reanimate this game. But when the first tournament was organized locally, I go there mostly to see old faces, meet old people, you know. And yeah, I played couple games, and I deep in love in second edition.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And was that Sip? Was it the same for you, where you sort of fell off with first edition when it sort of died out, and then played second edition on a whim and fell in love again, or how did you get into the second edition?
Well, I stopped playing first edition like shortly after second factions of Master Set were released. I just kind of got bored of the game. Then I hoped for a couple of years to Star Wars Destiny. I really enjoyed that game, and that game died also. And like 2 years ago, my friend DM'd me that second edition of Summoner Wars is gonna be released in like what was it, 2 months or so, and I was like, oh cool, maybe let's check it. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into second edition back.
Yeah. And now it's for the rest of your life. Till
I
all
mean, we'll
66
see.
summoners. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. How is it? I'm curious. We should talk about the game, but I'm curious about like how it's progressed for both of you. Since like we had the second edition master set, and then more new factions after that. Have you guys been a big fan of the new factions? Been skeptical? Do you find yourself getting more into the game, or any less as things go on?
Pretty uh, pretty old faction, maybe except Wayfarers. It's not quite my style, and really. But yeah, the new faction are great, and of course the reanimate of old faction like Rectalus. I in first edition I not enjoy playing like Fallen Kingdom, but now it's one of my favorite decks. Yeah, and with the matter of new faction, I love Kybir's Ivan. I love Crimson Order. It's very interesting deck and very strong at this moment. High Elves are very how to say it, very interesting and complicated deck to master. So it's a lot of new stuff to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm loving the Crimson Order as well. Sip, what about you and the new factions? How you been feeling?
I like them. Like they introduced some of the some new mechanics, and they are cool. Like taking cards back with Shadow Elves. It's pretty. I like that. It's kind of suits my playstyle. Also, Valeria is cool. Like the way she wants to like take control of midfield and just kind of stay there and do efficient trades with peace, Cassia, and war and all that setup. Like I feel like the new factions all have pretty cool design, and yeah.
Yeah.
Except Warfires.
Wafers, they are kind of one-dimensional, but yeah.
I love them. I'm a big fan, and I'm always a sort of a turtle player, but I like the Wayfarer is just like unlock the inner child in me of just like, oh yeah, I'll sprint all my units towards the backfield. That'll be fun. But let's chat about the game a bit. And I'm not sure quite what to ask, but like just generally to start, like how did you guys initially plan to approach this matchup, and then how did that change as the game unfolded?
Okay, for me it was pretty straightforward to establish my position at midfield and trying to swarm units and win the trade with breakers. The first half of our game doesn't look like a planet because this blast in first turn was quite surprised and quite ruined my own plans. Because
Yeah.
after that, I had to spend my first turn on defense and had some issue with running forward after that. So yeah, so first half of the game was a little different than the plan. But after that, when I established the midfield position, the things start to go easier for me. Because when Cassia go on the board, I stop to losing my units, start to winning all trades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, the strat was to play pretty aggressively at the start, like try to hold Valeria back and try to hold the midfield for as long as possible, and then sort of try to go slowly back and just try to trade efficiently as much as possible. It kind of didn't work out because I didn't drew any gates, so it was kind of awkward to stay there, and that's kind of why I feel like the game didn't go as well as I would have liked it to go.
And so your plan from the get-go was stop Valeria's pressure by playing aggressively. Like if you had gotten the gate to keep up the pressure, you would have stayed in the midfield. You would have stayed in Valeria's face the whole time.
Yes. Mainly because well, how to explain?
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult to when Valeria wants to make her whole setup with Cassia, Peace, and War and trade with that. But if you can force her to like create that fortress on her side of the field, like on the very back, and then she wants and then make her move forward, it's kinda awkward for her to do that because she has only 3 movements plus the Valeria's ability dictate. And yeah, with only those movements, it's a little bit harder for her to move forward and take that midfield. But yeah, it's kind of like I felt like if I gave up on midfield right from the start, I would have lost way harder. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, movements in High Elves is hell, cause if I built my whole fortress on my side, I wouldn't be able to push all this unit forward. So that was a good strategy, I guess.
Yeah, I was talking to Ben earlier, and I saw the aggressive play, and I was like, well, if you had a gate there, and maybe in your second hand, it would support that, but it seems like you just kind of struggled to get a gate on your first couple of turns, and that kind of just muted the offense. And so it's difficult to push into Valeria's side of the field if you really can't get units on her side of the board. So I I saw that and I was like, oh well, maybe it can happen, but it just didn't work out the way I guess you had planned.
Yeah. But I tried to maximize my odds by discarding my whole hand, but well, it wasn't
Yeah.
enough.
Sometimes you just don't get the gates you need.
Yeah. But I don't know if I played what would happen if I played just range game from the start. I feel like I don't know what would happen. Like at the very end, you saw that I left to Bradulf that I was doing absolutely no damage. Like this piece on the right side of the gate was, I don't know for how many turns she was there, but longer than she should. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I think the
those.
range game probably would have inched towards High Elves' favor just because they have piece that you're not really getting if you're playing at ranged. And then also with Priest just coming out and healing that damage, it's a tough trade. I agree with your original assessment of let's push into Valeria, capture their auras, and then put pressure on her side of the board. But that kind of strategy, especially early on, really requires your hand to cooperate. And so, um, yeah, it was interesting. I think in a couple of turns, I think maybe around turn 22, 21, you had moved Takulu up to the 4 health gate here. Maybe yeah, right here. Yep. And so my original suspicion was that maybe you had a mind control because I think that would have been a great way to really turn around the game. I guess in your effort to maybe find your gates or specific commons or champions, did you end up discarding both mind controls early on, or what was the general strategy with that epic event?
Uh, well, I had to discard both mind controls at the very start. Like both of them, I drew both of them in like first 3 turns or so. Like
Oh,
it was more like a bait or so. Uh, I moved also Takul because Takul is 8 HP if I recall correctly. It
mhm.
was turn 22, yeah, or which one was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
did.
yeah. The Takulu was healthy enough that I knew I can take like 1 or 2 hits and still keep her alive. Also, I was running low on magic, so I couldn't like just do trade with commons because I was out of magic. And that's kind of why I moved her.
Yeah.
Kind of desperate, but I had no clue what to do different than that.
I love
Yeah,
the
yeah.
frontline Takulu, because people very often play Takulu in last 2 lines, but it's pretty tanky summoner with good defense ability, so good to take her frontline for first turn and when they yeah, their HP is lower, move back and play more defensively.
Yeah, I agree, because it's like, do you even care whether Takula is 2 HP or 30 HP in the late game? Like, she does the same things through the whole game.
Yeah, it's tough too because I mean, high elves really specialize in not letting you kill their units. And so many different ways to heal them, and it's like Takulu's ability just suddenly doesn't become as relevant anymore because you're not able to kill anything. And even if you have the dice maybe 3 ranged on 1 or 2 health units, you just then you have to execute on the luck here. And the dice rolls are pretty tragic towards the end. And so it's a combination of like, well, Takulu needs to be able to kill units to kind of use her ability, but like the high elves really specialize in not letting you do that. So it's a difficult trade off, and so I can see how you can just try to get value out of Takulu by bringing her into the front lines. But yeah, it's tragic to hear you discarded the mind control early on, because I think Ben and I were talking about it, and we were like really rooting for you to kind of bring out this huge swing turn where you mind controlled Valeria's units. Maybe Bradulf just gets really confident in his ability and just plays like Law of Liberty, and that just really turns to a bad time for him, maybe. But yeah, with an early discard, that kind of really limits your options towards the end there. So yeah, interesting to see it from your perspective, though. I mean, yeah, it's a tough match. I really wouldn't know how to respond as breakers with that board setup.
Yeah, it was tough because I really don't recall when I last played Breakers. Like, it was probably in the league. I don't know when was it, but I feel like it was quite some time ago. So yeah, it was quite a challenge to play faction that I didn't play for a couple months.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you did a great job.
Like always.
Thank you.
Yeah, is there like do you guys feel like there's any advice for like anyone else who I'm sure will find themselves in a similar situation as Takulu, where it's like, I tried to push, it didn't work, I lost the midfield. What can I do? Is like, if you don't have mind control, like is the econ path just gone? Like, you have to hope for an assassination at that point? Is there any way Takulu can win a ranged game, value trades? Is there any way here, or is it just over once we lose that midfield?
Guess the
it-
best option is playing with wind mages and try to break Valeria formation,
Mm.
taking one unit at the time, and slowly trying to break this whole fortress.
I mean, well, I have one question. Do you mean specifically high elves versus higher elves, or
Yes,
in
yes,
general?
versus high elves. Yes.
Versus high elves, I feel like the assassination is the only way. Like,
Mhm.
you're losing too much on eco to play the eco in the scenario where you lose the aerial pressure. Like, it's too big of a loss. Like, I feel like if I would play the range game from the very start, I could probably bring one champ like Gul'dan or Kal, and that would increase my damage output. I don't know whether that would be enough, but it would definitely increase my damage output.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that I was curious to ask you guys about, is Takulu and champs. Like, Prophet and I were talking a fair bit about how she just kind of in a weird spot when it comes to champs, with them just being so hard to get out there, and like there's some discussion about, or like on the Discord, of like Watered will say, like, I always get out 1 or 2 champs, and like I'm still sort of playing breakers where I don't play champs, even though I think it's probably the right way to go. Was Takulu's champs a big part of either of your thinking? Like, SIP, did you feel like you needed to get one out at some point in order to take this game, to get value? Were you discarding for that, or was it not a priority?
Uh, I'm trying to think whether they were part of my plan. Like this champ would be cool if I just kinda got a good pool of magic and just snowball the game with that champion. Maybe that would be a way to go, but I don't know. Like when I play aggressively, especially with Takulu, it's significantly harder to summon champs. Like I
Yeah.
I don't think summoning Kalal is a good idea at all because she's more about just trading and playing slowly. Gul'dan is okay for some big assassination turns, similarly to Gvalark. Oh yeah, the flying champion.
Yeah.
I, I forgot his name,
No, I
but
know you
yeah,
got it.
Gvalark is also a way to finish off someone. But yeah, you have to kind of snowball the game and get a good magic pull to pull this off.
Yeah.
Hard to farming magic points on high elves.
Yeah, high, because mainly because the high elves are so high HP and it's difficult to kill them.
Yeah, and Bradulf was Takulu's champions any part of your thinking as well? Like I noticed on turn 10, like I think SIP was at the most magic we had in the game, 6, and that's the first turn that you were able to push and sort of take the midfield for the first time. We were wondering if that was intentional. If you're seeing, okay, this is high magic. I need to not let Takulu sit back with a champ or something here. Or was that not really on your mind?
Yeah, in this situation, I mostly was afraid about Kalal, because when I won't be able to push forward with Archer and Kalal, I will be dead in few turns. Because my range options are pretty limited to Peace and Priestess. Peace is better as a support unit than an aggressive range unit. So yeah, without establish the midfield, control this area with against a Kalal, I think I would be lose that match.
Yeah, gotcha.
I wasn't as much afraid about Gul'dan, because Gul'dan needs target to proc his ability, and I think he hasn't any good target for that. So I think the most dangerous was Kalal. And I know Skip never played Gwalark, so he even don't remember his name. So
okay, let's just skip the Gvalork. You brought a very interesting point about the turn. Was it like 9 or 10 or so, something like that, when I had this 6 magic pool, and I was thinking for a while, like, what do I want to do with my hand? I had I don't know whether you can see my hand. Can you?
No, we can't. We cannot.
Okay, so I had like Archer, Mind Witch, Deceiver, Tempest, and Hypnotic, and I feel like now when when I think about the game, I feel like it was a mistake that I kept the whole hand. I starting off, I discarded the Kalal. I drew her in my first hand, and it was no way that I would have summoned her that early on. But maybe going for Gul'dan would be a better play. Now when I think about it, it's kind of difficult to decide whether that would be a better play, but maybe like that would increase my damage output for sure.
Yeah, it seems so. So Kalal was gone early on. Yeah, it seems tough to get Gildoon safe in this matchup, especially when you're forced to the back. But yeah, that could make sense to just help clean up the board when high elves just have so much going on all the time.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that turn where you didn't discard anything either. I imagined you had a champion because you had 6 magic. I felt like maybe you had like a huge combo piece going on. And it was particularly interesting because I would expect typically when you're only still one gate on the board that you're still trying to search for that second gate, but maybe you had a champion, maybe you had a strong combo piece. So I was curious as to why there was no searching or discards, but it's definitely a risk you have to take if you want to kind of maintain, and it's a hard hand to discard, right? Because like those are all pretty strong commons you'll probably need to maintain your board position, but yeah, discarding on early champions and when you finally have the magic but not the champion in hand, it's a tough choice to make. So I can see why.
Yeah, that turn, I felt like the game is gonna be a range game for like a 1 or 2 turns more, and with Tempest, with Archer, I feel like I wanna keep those units and just try to play this range game for a couple turns more, but yeah, didn't work out. Yeah, I feel like it would have been a better play to just discard like a 2 or 3 cards and maybe play for the Golden.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it seems like covered the matchup pretty well. I feel like I have a better understanding of this matchup and how I'll go about it in the future. You guys, what's next for Summoner Wars for you guys? I know you guys do meetups over there sometimes. Still planning those, or excited about any new factions and tournaments? What's on your guys' mind?
Well, so we have those meetups, and yeah, I feel like we are gonna keep going with them. Like we meet once for a couple months. So yeah, those are pretty cool events. Uh, there are some rumors that maybe Massimo is gonna visit us, but I don't know.
Ooh.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, those
No
in terms
pressure,
of
of course.
yeah, absolutely zero. But besides meetups, I'm quite lucky with Bradulf that my university is like, I don't know, 2 minutes away from Bradulf's house, so I can just
Oh, awesome.
sometimes come and visit him and just play 1 or 2 games, and that's a great opportunity to play some games in real life.
That's wonderful. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and Bradolph, how about you? What are you most excited for on the horizon? Summoner Wars.
Uh, I'm mostly waiting for next season of League because I come back to first division, and of course, waiting for next tournament. I guess October, the last day of October.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I know now started this deck building tournament, and I will participate that, but I'm not quite enjoyer of deck building. I prefer the basic decks.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I'm glad you're giving it a try at least.
Yeah, it's
I
mostly because there is no other events now, because the league coming to an end, and the next tournament will be at the end of this month, so I have no other option.
Yeah.
I think that's a strategic move by Plaid Hat Games to make the custom deck tournament sign up first. They know that that's probably the less popular of the two, so some people might just give it a shot. I mean, I really enjoy deck building. I think that's just another wild west out there. I'm definitely not as good at deck building than I am at base deck, just because the permutations of like all the different possible outcomes really takes me back. So every day I'm surprised with something I see out in the deck building world, but I do enjoy it for the same reason I think I enjoy talking about Summoner Wars. It's the theory crafting, the what ifs, and kind of just finding out like potentially broken combinations and putting that to test against other people's theory craft is it's exhilarating for me, especially when you imagine something playing out and it kind of works out in the way you envisioned it. It's satisfying. And then there's always the discussion of what went wrong, and in base deck you don't really get to make adjustments to your deck, right? You can only really adjust based on the cards you draw and maybe the how you would have approached it next time. But there's now this kind of element of, hey, is it the way I played, or maybe it's the way I built my deck. And some people might not enjoy that, but I personally really like it. I think the conversation and the theory crafting is probably more enjoyable than even playing the game sometimes. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm excited for that. I think I'll probably sign up as well, but I don't really have like huge expectations for myself here. I'm just more doing it because it's fun. So
Yeah, possibilities of deck building are endless, and I can't imagine how deck building scene will look like when all 66 decks will come out. That
I
will
think
be a deck building nightmare.
I think it'll be great. I think we're gonna see some crazy stuff.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like what attracted to me at first to Summoner Wars was like the simplicity of the base decks, and like I get overwhelmed by having to build my own deck, and so I like that I didn't have to do that. But now, like once I've got a grasp of the base decks, I agree. Like deck building is fun, and it's fun to chat about. And honestly, like I wouldn't like the amount of time that I feel like you would need to spend to like fully get a grasp on deck building. It seems like astronomically higher than base decks, um, which is maybe kind of a weird take, but it's just like I don't know. I feel like I can with deck building. I really want to just like hone one deck for like 50 or 100 games before I like can say like okay, I'm pretty happy with every single card in this deck is like very optimal, and like there's just so many decks out there. Like I haven't even really started to try to figure out what the best Shadow Elves deck is, and the Cloaks deck that you took, Prophet. Like I just like it seems powerful, but it goes over my head. Like how to play that best, and there's so many opportunities. So it seems I'm excited for the tournament as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It took me a couple of months to really just flesh out that cloaks deck, and I agree. It takes a while to kind of think through like what it is the optimal kind of deck build for the strategy you want. But at the end of the day, even as optimal as you might build it, the draw dependency really matters. So it becomes less about especially when you have the ability to just slot in one or two cards or something. It's more about making your deck consistent enough to realize the strategy you're going for. But yeah, agreed. I think deck building is very daunting for a lot of people who aren't really familiar with it or don't have experience doing it. So I like that the deck building in this game is a little bit more simple. I mean, it really restricts you to kind of two symbols. So you only really have to understand like two different kind of cards from two different symbols to really put together your strategy, as opposed to other card building, deck building games where you can access just a wider range of different cards, and that becomes even more intimidating. So
Yeah,
yeah, I agree with you there.
uh Bradulf and Sip, when you guys played first edition, did you guys do much deck building back then, or still mostly base?
We played deck building like 90% of time,
Oh wow, okay,
because
yeah,
the first edition decks, mostly of them was pretty bad design. Uh, so
yeah,
deck building was a better option for consistent playing and take more fun from this. So yeah, I guess all tournaments was in deck building format.
yeah.
Yeah, the deck building was definitely the main format that tournaments were played. Like I don't really recall any base deck tournaments in first edition, mainly because, as Bradulf said, the base decks had quite a few issues. Like there were many decks that had like couple very bad cards that you wouldn't really like to play because they were just such a low value plays, and that's just the way the things were. But yeah, deck building was fun. I remember like in first edition, Bradul had like deck. Uh, it was cloaks, and he put there's what was it? Renegades.
Yeah.
I feel like they were called like that. Like they work the same in second editions, but they are called mechanist. Like you had versatile on them, and it was together with one called Falcon. Falcon. I feel
Falcon,
like it
yeah.
was
Mhm.
yeah, Falcon, and it was such a cool deck. Like I really enjoyed this seeing Bradulf playing this deck, and I was like, okay, I wanna play also this, and I just copied this deck and also played for quite a lot because yeah, it was pure fun to play with that.
Yeah,
Like
I hated you for that. That was my deck.
yeah,
I had to buy an extra copy of Renegades because in first edition you could have a 8 copy of one common.
I believe it was 10. Like
Yeah,
like it was insane. Like
or
if you
maybe.
if you if if you
Yeah,
wanted to
maybe
have
10.
no, okay, go ahead, go ahead.
No, that's all. I had to buy extra copies of this unit to have them all.
Yeah, that's funny. Did you guys have any other favorite decks from first edition?
Yeah, I definitely were in love in Field, and I'm waiting to release them in second edition.
Yeah, yeah.
But Field has that problem that most decks that come after them has some very good counterplay against them. Because in Field you played mostly with common units. All this mutation card was counted like a common, and mostly every deck in Master Set and future release was some good abilities against common units. So in uh, some time of one edition, the field was pretty unplayable because these whole counter decks. But I still enjoy them.
Yeah, yeah.
And back to the deck building, I guess the first edition was mostly built to be a deck building game because every faction had two decks and some extra cards sold it as extra cards. So and all these mercenaries units, all of this was like built specially for deck building.
Yeah, yeah.
There's actually one more reason why deck building was so popular in first edition. Like, you had first faction and second faction,
Mm-hmm.
and like what was the last pack? I don't know. I don't remember how the pack was called, but you could exchange cards and you didn't lose much synergy because the base decks were not as synergizing as much as they do in the second edition. So it was really simple to just swap couple cards.
Yeah, it was pretty uncommon to make this deck worse than that basic deck. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like with vlogs, it was like I feel like we just removed all the commons that were in base deck and just replaced them with renegades and couple other cards. But yeah,
That's it.
from the base decks, you only kept like one champion that could attack through other units. But besides
Yeah,
that, it was
it was Violet.
yeah.
Violet,
The-
Falcon, and Renegades, and that was perfect deck.
yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I'm curious to see that. I wonder if there's ever like gonna be second edition, because sometimes like the second edition decks are based off of something that came thematically from a first edition deck, and I wonder if that would ever come from like a deck build or something. Like what what does the second I didn't play first edition, so like does the second edition cloaks, do they resemble like the base cloaks or anything, or more in deck building?
It's like mix of first and second decks.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because Vlogs is pretty the same as before, and Machinist or Renegades in first edition comes from the second decks. Also, Snipers was in additional decks. So yeah, it's like most of these old decks is like mix of couple couple card from first edition, couple decks.
Yeah, gotcha. And Sip, have you tried much deck building in the second edition now, or it's just stuck to base?
Well, last time I played deck building was in Chabata's tournament. It
Yeah.
was in team based team tournament
Yeah.
team custom decks. When I played with Bradulf and Wifon Master, and yeah, I played Svara. I thought the deck was broken back then because I just put scavengers and just cycled parapets, and I feel like this deck was kind of insane, especially with old Ice Ram and how it interacted with
Uh,
all summoners. And yeah, but I don't know whether that would be still as powerful. Probably yes, but yeah, I didn't play much deck building since then. I just
yeah.
feel like whenever I see people just throwing a screenshot of Broop just killing everything on the board, I am like, do I really want to play this deck building?
Oh no.
You
Yeah, it's
do.
the
The
most
answer is you do.
cancer deck building. Group with Grognak is a pure cancer.
I mean, maybe I will try, but yeah, whenever I see just Grognak and this Broop, I feel like I don't know whether banning is the right choice, but I feel like it's kind of OP. Like I haven't played much deck building, so my opinion is not as relevant. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's tough to say.
I would definitely play with it a bit, because like I've been surprised in finding that I don't like I don't get that annoyed by it, and I tend to not find it OP. I know a lot of players still, at least even if it's not OP, are sort of against it on principle, but I can generally find myself like being able to play around Brub, or that he's at least somewhat predictable, and that so there's some of the other decks that are going on are even crazier. Like just some of the nonsense you can do with Shadow Elves being able to just like play Renewed Hope, Glinting Speed, Blood Summon, and Demand, and you like I'm honestly a lot more afraid of some other decks than I am of the Tundra Orcs deck. But I still think there's just a lot of untapped potential in deck building. Like I really only started playing a few months ago, and I've only tried a few decks at this point. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. You guys have any last questions or things you wanted to address before we call this done?
I don't think so. I feel like that's it from me.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. It's it's great to just hear about your experience with Summoner Wars. I didn't even know when we got you on that you guys were so close, that you guys had played so much in person. That's really wonderful.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fun game to watch. I feel like I'm learning a lot about the High Elves and why I need to be afraid of them.
Yeah.
They are tough. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll hopefully have another Scuffle up next week. And thanks everyone in chat. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks Prophet for coming on and co-commentating with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. I will see you guys later.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.